You don't remember the exact moment you learned how to do it. That's the thing about learning something that changes you. The knowledge arrives so quietly that by the time you notice it, you've already been using it. Like breathing, like blinking, like the subtle adjustments you make when you realize someone is watching you, except now you're the one doing the watching, and you never look away. It starts on a Tuesday. Or maybe it was a Thursday. The days have started to blur together in a way that doesn't concern you anymore. Because you've noticed something far more interesting than calendar dates. You've noticed that when you say certain things in certain ways, the energy in the room shifts. When you withhold information, just slightly, just a pause longer than necessary, people lean in. When you agree with someone enthusiastically and then turn to someone else with a fraction less warmth, you can watch the first person's posture change. They try harder. They speak faster. They want that warmth back. And you realize you can give it to them. Or not. The group has been meeting for 3 years now. 5 of you, sometimes 6 when Marcus brings his girlfriend. Though she stopped coming around month 4 and nobody talks about why. You've known these people since college, since the dorms. Mengjiao, since the version of yourself that used to laugh too loud and talk too much because you were terrified of silence. That version feels distant now, like a photograph of someone wearing your face. You study that old self sometimes, the way it tried so desperately hard to be liked. The way it offered itself up for judgment again and again, hoping to be chosen. You don't do that anymore. The shift happens gradually, the way all corruption happens. Through small doors that don't look like doors, through permissions you give yourself that don't feel like permissions at the time. It starts with David. David who always interrupts. David who takes up space in conversations like he's owed it. Who speaks over other people mid-sentence and never apologizes because he's never noticed. For years you've swallowed your irritation, smiled through it. Let him have his moment because that's what good friends do. But one evening, you try something different. He starts talking over Lisa, and then you simply turn your body toward her. Not dramatically, not pointedly. Just a gentle, complete attention that excludes him. You ask her to continue. You ask follow-up questions. You treat his interruption like it didn't happen, like he didn't speak, like the sound that came from his mouth was no different from the traffic noise outside the window. And Lisa blooms. She speaks more confidently, more fully, her thoughts given room to breathe. But what you notice, what you really notice, is David's face. The flicker of confusion, the uncertain laugh, the way he starts to say something else and then stops, looking at you, trying to read something he can't quite name. He pulls back. He waits his turn. For the rest of the night, he asks questions instead of making statements. You did that. You controlled that. And no one even saw you do it. That night, lying awake, you tell yourself it was a good thing. You helped Lisa. You taught David something about listening. This is what friends do. They balance each other. They correct each other's worst impulses. What you did was practically noble. But there's a warmth in your chest that has nothing to do with nobility. It sits there like an ember. And you let yourself feel it because no one can see inside you. No one knows that the pleasure you felt wasn't about Lisa at all. It was about watching David doubt himself, or it was about holding something invisible and feeling its weight, testing its edges, realizing it was yours to use again. The weeks pass. You begin to map the group like a cartographer studying coastlines, looking for the places where pressure can be applied, where the terrain is soft. You learn that Sarah needs external validation to feel secure in any opinion. If you agree with her early, she becomes loyal to you for the rest of the night. You learn that Marcus is terrified of conflict and will change his position on anything if the alternative is tension. A useful lever when you need the group to pivot. You learn that Lisa, for all her intelligence, has never recovered from being the overlooked middle child and will work twice as hard to maintain any attention you give her. You learn that David respects strength, but doesn't know how to recognize quiet strength, only the loud, obvious kind. So you can manage him simply by being still when he expects motion. Your silence unsettles him. Your calm makes him louder, which makes him look worse, which makes the others gravitate toward you without understanding why. You've never thought of yourself as manipulative. The word feels wrong, too clinical, too intentional. What you're doing is more like gardening. You're just creating conditions. You're adjusting light and water, pruning what needs pruning, and watching things grow in the direction you've chosen. The plants don't know they're being shaped. They feel natural. That's the elegance of it. At some point, you're not sure when, you stop asking yourself why you're doing this. The question becomes irrelevant because the doing itself is enough. There's a precision to it that satisfies something deep, something you didn't know was hungry. You spend time before each gathering thinking through the evening, anticipating dynamics, while planning small interventions, not manipulation, orchestration. You're just making things run more smoothly. And they do run more smoothly. That's what you tell yourself in the bathroom mirror, meeting your own eyes with a steadiness you didn't used to have. The group is better now. Conversations are more balanced. People feel more heard, except when they don't. And when they don't, it's because you've decided they've taken enough space for the night. You're not selfish about it. You give everyone their turn. You're fair in your way, but fair according to rules that only you know exist. Fair according to a system you designed in secret, implemented in silence, and judge entirely by yourself. The first real crack appears 3 months in, though you won't recognize it as a crack until much later. Sarah says something during a lull in conversation. Nothing important, just an observation about a movie she'd seen. And before you can decide how to receive it, Lisa responds, Sona warmly, enthusiastically. The two of them spin off into a conversation that doesn't include you, doesn't need you, flows without any intervention on your part. And you feel it. A cold drop in your stomach that you don't want to name. It's not jealousy, not exactly. It's something worse. It's the feeling of holding a thread you thought was attached to something, only to discover it's been cut and you didn't notice. For a moment, just a moment, the room keeps moving without your permission. You correct this. You find a way back in. A comment, a question, something that makes both of them turn toward you again. But the cold doesn't leave entirely. You understand, in a way you won't admit to yourself, that what you've built requires maintenance. It requires you to be paying attention, always, because the moment you look away, people remember they can do things without you. They remember that you're not actually necessary. So you stop looking away. The group begins to change, or maybe you just begin to notice what was always there. The way conversations seem to wait for you now. Not obviously. Not in a way anyone would point to. But in the small hesitations before people speak, the glances that check your face before opinions are offered. You've become some kind of center of gravity. People orbit without knowing they're orbiting. They think they're just sitting in a room with their friends, but you can see the geometry of it now. You can see how you've bent the space. Marcus calls you one evening, a rare one-on-one moment. and his voice has that particular uncertainty it gets when he's about to ask something he thinks might be stupid. He wants to know what you think about inviting someone new to the group. A co-worker of his. Someone who might be a good fit. You listen. You ask thoughtful questions. You express appropriate interest. And then, carefully, you plant a small seed of doubt, nothing aggressive. Just a gentle wondering about whether the group dynamics are in a good place right now. Whether adding someone new might disrupt something that's working well. You tell him it's obviously his call, you're just sharing a perspective. 2 days later, he tells you he's decided to wait. Maybe next year. The group is in such a good place right now, he says. He doesn't want to risk it. You thank him for being so thoughtful about the group's health. You mean it in a way. You're genuinely grateful that he listened. The fact that the words he's using are words you gave him. The fact that his decision is your decision wearing his face. That doesn't diminish his sincerity. He really does feel this way. You've just helped him feel it. This is how it works now. You help people feel things. You shape the landscape of their emotional possibilities, and then they walk through it believing they're choosing their own path. It's not dishonest. Not exactly. You're not lying to anyone. You're just curating. You're creating a space where certain outcomes become more likely than others, and people make their own choices within that space. If anything, you're protecting them from choices that would have gone badly. You know this group. You know what it needs. Except now the group is changing in ways you didn't anticipate. David has become quieter, more careful, less himself. You watch him sometimes, and you can see him checking, always checking, monitoring the room for signals you've taught him to fear without ever being direct about it. He used to be annoying. Now he's anxious. You're not sure which is worse. Sarah has grown more dependent on your approval. She seeks you out now before committing to opinions, even in conversations you're not part of. She texts you afterward. Did that land okay? Was I too much? And you always reassure her because you're not cruel. You're not trying to hurt anyone. Well, but the reassurance only makes her need more reassurance. You've created a loop. You're not sure how to close it or if you want to. Lisa seems fine. Better than fine, actually. She speaks more confidently now, takes up more space, seems more fully herself. This should make you happy. This was supposed to be the point. You helped her. You created room for her voice. But there's something in the way she looks at you lately. A steadiness you don't remember. An assessment behind her eyes that makes you want to check your face in the mirror, make sure nothing is showing. You tell yourself this is paranoia. You tell yourself you're seeing things because you're looking too hard. But the thing about being aware of how attention works, how power operates in the small spaces between words, the thing about truly understanding that, is that you can't unknow it. You can never again believe that someone's gaze is innocent, that a pause is just a pause, that an unsent text means nothing. You've taught yourself to read everything, and now everything is readable, including, increasingly, the way people are reading you. The evening it happens is unremarkable in every way that matters. The same room, the same drinks, the same 5 faces arranged in the same loose circle, voices overlapping in patterns you know by heart. You've grown comfortable here. Maybe too comfortable. Maybe that's why you don't see it coming. Lisa is talking about a work trip she's planning. Paris, 2 weeks, some kind of conference that gives her an excuse to stay longer. The others are asking the usual questions, expressing the usual excitement. And you're offering the usual supportive comments because that's how this works. That's how you've designed it to work. But then Lisa pauses. She looks at you, not glances, looks. And she says something you don't expect. You know, I used to be terrified of trips like this. I used to think I couldn't handle being somewhere alone, making decisions without running them by everyone first. The room waits. You feel your face holding steady, the way you've trained it to hold. But I've been thinking a lot lately about how much I used to outsource my confidence. Looking for permission all the time, waiting for certain people to tell me my ideas were good before I could believe it myself. She's still looking at you. The others might not notice. Sarah is nodding along. Marcus is checking his phone. But you notice. You notice the way her words have edges that are pointing somewhere specific, even if she'd never say it directly. I don't want to do that anymore, she says. I want to trust myself. Even if that means some people might be uncomfortable with me not needing them to tell me what to think. She breaks eye contact. She laughs, deflects, makes a joke about needing to practice her French. The moment passes. The conversation moves on. But something has shifted in the room. Something you can feel even if you can't see it. A thread has been cut, and this time, you felt it go. That night, you lie awake and try to find the anger. It should be there. She was ungrateful after all. You helped her become this person. You gave her the confidence she's now using to push away from you. But the anger won't come. Instead, there's something colder, something more like recognition. She saw you. She might not know exactly what she saw, might not have the words for it, but she felt the shape of what you've been doing, and she decided she didn't want it anymore. She found a way out, and she did it not by confronting you, not by making a scene, but by simply choosing herself loud enough that you couldn't pretend she was still yours to shape. You think about that word. Yours. You didn't used to think of people that way. Or maybe you did, and you just didn't admit it. The weeks after Lisa's announcement feel different. You're still there, still present, still the center of the room. But you can feel the center thinning, becoming less solid. David laughs more easily now, as if something has given him permission. Sarah still looks to you, but sometimes she forgets to. And when she does, she seems surprised by her own opinions. Marcus suggests inviting that coworker again, and this time you don't say anything because you're curious what will happen. And what happens is the group agrees without your input. You're losing it. Whatever you built, whatever you learned to control, it's slipping back to something wild. And the strangest part, the part you don't know how to hold, is that you're not sure if what you feel is grief or relief. One evening, the group's smaller than usual because Marcus is sick and Sarah is traveling. You find yourself sitting across from David and Lisa. The conversation is easy, unstructured, just moving in directions you haven't predicted. You make a suggestion about where to go for dinner, and David counters with a different place, and Lisa agrees with David, and you realize, watching this happen, watching yourself lose this tiny decision, that you don't actually know how to be in a room where you're not in charge of the room. You've forgotten how to just be a person, one among others, equal, unremarkable, uncontrolling. You've forgotten that you used to be someone who didn't need to hold all the strings because you didn't know there were strings to hold. You used to laugh at things without calculating how your laughter would be received. You used to disagree without first measuring whether disagreement would cost you influence. You used to trust people to like you without giving them reasons. That person feels very far away now. You can almost see them, a younger you standing at the edge of your vision. But when you turn toward them, they're gone. They're always gone. You replaced them so gradually that there was never a moment to say goodbye. And now you're left with yourself, this careful, watchful thing you've become. And you're not sure you like what you're looking at. The evening winds down. You walk home alone because you said you wanted the air, and that's partly true. But it's also true that you needed a moment away from their faces, away from the particular exhaustion of being around people you've studied too closely. The streets are empty, and the silence is the good kind. The kind where no one needs anything from you, where you can stop performing the version of yourself that manages and monitors and controls. But you don't know who you are in this silence anymore. You don't know what you actually think, actually feel, actually want, because you've spent so long calculating what would be effective, that effectiveness has become the only thing that feels real. If no one is watching, if no one is being influenced, if the room is empty, who are you then? What wants do you even have that aren't about control? You stand outside your apartment building for a long time, looking up at the lit windows of strangers. In one window, you can see the blue glow of a television. In another, a shadow passes and passes again, pacing. In a third, nothing moves at all. Just the light. Just the presence of someone living a life you know nothing about. You used to find that comforting, the evidence of other lives. Now it just makes you aware of how much you've been treating your own life like something to be managed. You've been so focused on the group, on the dynamics, on being the invisible architect of every interaction, that you've forgotten you're supposed to be inside these moments, not above them. You go upstairs. You pour a drink you don't want because it's something to do with your hands. You sit in your living room and you listen to the silence, and you try to remember what it felt like before you learn this skill that has slowly, slowly eaten you from the inside out. But you can't remember. That's the price, you realize. That's what you traded for control. The ability to be unaware. The ability to be simple. The ability to be a person in a room full of people without seeing all the strings, or without knowing they're yours to pull. You pull out your phone. There's a message from Lisa, something casual, a link to an article, nothing that demands a response. You look at it for a long time. You could respond. You could begin the slow work of pulling her back into orbit, reminding her subtly of the closeness you used to share, reinstating yourself as someone she seeks out. Or you could just respond. Like a person. Like someone who reads an article because a friend sent it, not because responding correctly maintains a particular relational architecture. You don't know how to do that anymore. You're not sure you remember what just responding feels like. Every word you could type comes with an awareness of how it will be received, what it will signal, what response it will invite. You've poisoned your own mind with fluency. You know too much to ever be simple again. You put the phone down. You finish the drink. You go to bed without brushing your teeth because somehow that small act of carelessness feels important, feels like evidence that you're still capable of not controlling things. In the dark, you think about what the group will look like in a year, in 5 years. Whether you'll still be part of it, whether they'll have drifted away or you'll have drifted, whether the version of the group that exists now, the one that's slowly waking up from your influence, will remember that there was a time when things felt different. You wonder if they'll ever know what you were doing. You hope they won't. Not because you're ashamed, not exactly, but because you don't want them to carry that weight. You don't want them to look back at their memories and wonder which feelings were real. Some of them were real. You believe that. You want to believe that. But in the dark, with no one watching, you can admit to yourself that you don't know anymore. You can't tell the difference between genuine connection and connection you cultivated. You can't separate what they actually feel from what you've encouraged them to feel. The whole thing is contaminated, and you're the contamination, and there's no way to go back and start clean. You close your eyes. Tomorrow you'll wake up and you'll go through your day and you'll probably see one of them or text one of them, and you'll make choices about how to do that. You'll probably try to be better. You'll probably try to let go a little, to stop managing, to be a person instead of a system administrator for human relationships. But you'll still see the strings. You'll still know they're there. And some part of you, the part that learned this, the part that tasted control and found it delicious, that part will always be reaching for them. That's what no one tells you about learning how to control things. It's not that the power corrupts you. That's too simple, too clean. It's that the knowledge changes what you're capable of experiencing. You can't unknow how to manipulate a room. You can't unsee the levers and pressure points. Even if you choose not to use them, you'll always be aware they're there. Always be aware that you could always be a little bit outside the moment because part of you is watching the moment like a technician watches a machine. You are more effective than you've ever been. You understand people better than you ever have. And you are more alone than you knew it was possible to be. Because real intimacy requires a kind of blindness you've carefully, systematically taught yourself not to have. The group will keep meeting. The group will keep changing. And you'll keep being there, watching, feeling the old reflexes fire, the urge to adjust, to calibrate, to maintain your position. And sometimes you'll give in, and sometimes you won't. But you'll never again be someone who doesn't know what they're doing. That's the tragedy you didn't see coming. You thought you were gaining something. You thought you were becoming more capable, more aware, more in control of your life and your relationships. And you were. You absolutely were. But you were also losing the ability to be inside your own experience without watching yourself have it. You were trading presence for power, and you didn't even know presence was on the table. Now you do. Now you know exactly what you've lost. And you're going to keep waking up, keep moving through days, keep sitting in rooms with people you've loved and studied and shaped. And you're going to feel the weight of that knowledge every single moment. Not as punishment, not as guilt, just as awareness, just as the permanent, irremovable consciousness of what you became when you learned how to do this thing and what you can never become again. The group changed after you learned how to control it. But so did you. And yours is the change that can't be undone.